Constitution, but they meant the culture as well. Everybody's free. Anybody's free to swing their fist, but they're not at liberty to hit my nose. So the Constitution sets those beautiful boundaries and says you can do all these things, but you can't infringe on the rights of other people. That's the boundary of liberty. So that's why we are a land of liberty. We're a land of maximum boundaries that protects one another's rights.
The 4th of July, the Declaration of Independence. These go hand in hand with the US Constitution. But some say the Constitution is out of touch with our times, while others say it is what makes America America and what should protect America. Well, to get my constitutional facts straight, I took a tea time lesson from an expert. Author of your own life, author of your own happiness.
Yes, I am, literally and figuratively. Yeah, we should all be the author of our own lives, and we decide how we want that last chapter to go.
Oh, the last chapter.
Right, and we need to work and build towards that. And of course we'll have obstacles, and we may have disasters, but still, we can write our own book, and we should.
I've read some of Paul Scalzon's books, but his latest book is new to me.
A lot of people have written books on the Constitution, but people are afraid of the Constitution, so therefore they never get to those books. So I said, we need a gateway book. So
that's the one, yes.
This little one is called How to Read the Constitution and the Declarations. I also had fun with a glossary. There's a lot of words they use that we don't use anymore.
I can't say that I'm scared of the Constitution, but it does sound like heavy reading. So I wanted Paul to get me prepped for the learning.
What a beautiful day.
It is. And really glad to be here in Utah.
This is a great state to live in, and this is the best time of year, too.
What I see in the city, what I see in New York, is not what is happening necessarily all around the country. And what's fascinating about that, coming straight into the US Constitution, is that that's a document that's supposed to represent the whole nation. But how do you represent the whole nation when there's just such a diverse states, peoples? It's quite amazing to think that there even is such a thing. Can there be something that can represent everyone?
That's part of the big debate and discussion they had when they put this whole thing together in the Constitutional Convention. They said, we do have all these diverse opinions and viewpoints and religions and et cetera. Can you really make it work? And the answer was a republic. A republic is representation that's put into place by the people they represent. So you have a minority group, you have different cultures, everything. They elect their own representative. That's why it works.
The republic. That's not really a term that I hear much about. Is that something that's fading away? I mean, because you teach this.
Right, and most people don't understand it. A democracy, they say, hey, we're a democracy. Actually, no, we're not. Democracy means one man, one person, one vote. In ancient Greece, they would have a jury that would be hundreds of people, if not thousands. For the government to do everything, everybody had to participate. That's democracy.
But aren't we voting?
We do, but we vote for a representative. That means that's a republic. It's a representative form, so you elect a delegate, and that delegate participates with others, and you go on up the chain. In your state, you'll elect a state legislator, and that individual will meet with a couple hundred other people once a year, and they will extend their will up into the federal level. And when the Constitution was first written, that representative was the senator. That representative would then represent your state in Washington, D.C. So when we elect them popularly, like we do our House of Representatives, we've circumvented that whole representation of our states and our states' concerns.
Okay. That's a lot of information for me to process. But it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be, should it? Because this should be something that should be fairly commonly known.
Right.
And the fact that you have to explain it to people is kind of fascinating in itself. To me, it seems like a kind of fundamental issue for an American to understand.
I ask my students, what are the last 3 bills that our state legislature passed? Could you name for your state?
No.
No. And guess what? I can't for mine either. You know why? You and I are busy. That's not our passion, our job, our responsibility. But it is for our legislators. Would you rather not have an individual that does know what the 3 bills were last passed? Wouldn't you rather have your senator chosen from that group of informed, involved people?
Am I understanding this correctly, that if we had a true democracy, that my vote would be not for a representative but for that bill and then this bill and the other bill, and I would need to be informed or I'd be making it uninformed?
And that's why democracies don't work. Because your opinion is going to be different than somebody in your family. We all have our own bias, our own prejudice. And so for us to vote on these national issues, we're all prejudiced in one way or another. So instead, in a republic, you elect a representative who has the bigger picture, but knows the home issues. And those people work it out in Washington. It works because it's founded on true principles that respect one another's rights. And you resolve it down at the local level. So here where we live, we have some local issues that are important to us. We resolve them among ourselves. And a disgruntled person gets mad, and then they want to go up to the Supreme Court, and the court compels us to change. That's not what the Founding Fathers wanted. They said, solve it on your own local level. Protect yourselves through levels of representation.
So what about people who say the system never worked in the first place? Or, I mean, there's a lot of criticism of the Constitution. How do you face that when you're instructing students on this?
Right, and I hear that. When someone says the Constitution never worked, etc., then that tells me right away, first, they probably have never read it.
Okay.
And second, they have no historical understanding. The Founding Fathers came out of a king, a monarch, and the ministers talking to King George III, they were saying, you gotta get those colonists, man, you've got to tie them down because they're getting too rebellious. So they'd pass all these laws, and we would get angry and said, you're not treating our fellow countrymen over in England like this. How dare you treat us different like we're some other organization? So the founders said, we need to set up an organization so that the human nature, which is to oppress people. Once you have control, you want to oppress them. We need to set up a system so that can't happen. How do we do that? And they came up with the 3 branches of government, and they spread power out horizontally and vertically.
And you're saying the Constitution is set up against oppression?
Right.
Is that commonly known, would you say, these days?
I would say people don't appreciate that. See, one of the great freedoms we have in this country, the 4 great freedoms: the freedom to try, to buy, to sell, to fail.
To try, to buy,
To sell, to fail.
To fail.
Yeah, Adam Smith came up with that. And he was one of those great scholars that inspired the Founding Fathers as they were putting together this system. It's the failure part that people don't like. Actually, that's what drives us forward. It's because you and I see some poor little kids dying of cancer that people go into medicine. It's the failures. Okay, that's an extreme example, right? But if the government came in and said, sorry, we can't let you use resources to study cancer because there's simply not enough. We've got starving people. If that's what a socialist government does, it decides what you're going to do. In our free system, we can pursue our dreams, we can fall flat on our face. That risk helps us learn from our lessons and do better next time. At CIA, I came across people who would come out of the Soviet Union, and their lives were so constricted. They were told everything what to do. We would get a defector that comes in and call up his handler at night saying, so, Lord, I'd like to go to a movie. Will you go with me to the movie? Do I have to bring my papers? And the handler would say, no, you can go on your own if you want.
And they couldn't understand that.
Yeah, because they're not being told what to do. And so when a defector cannot handle this much freedom and choice about your own risks and whatnot, They go back. They wanted to be told what to do and when to do it. They were accustomed to that. And you don't get innovation, invention, creation, progress, discovery. You don't get that out of a society and culture that's so clamped down.
And that's that sense of oppression that the Constitution is set up against.
So when you go into a country that's really heavy, a theocratic government, you jaywalk, it's a violation of God's law, not just the city law. Those people are not ready for this kind of freedom formula. They have to be personally invested in the value system. Look across the world at constitutions. Many, many, many of them have mimicked and duplicated our Bill of Rights, our three branches of government structure, our checks and balances, impeachment processes. Those are all copied all around the world.
And is that part of the American dream that people aspire to? Why do people want to come to America? A lot of people try to come here. They're aspiring to something. Is it connected?
It's connected because they recognize certain rights are protected here. I write a lot of books. I put a copyright. But I've had them translated, and they go to other countries, never see a royalty. They just copy it. They pirate it. Not in this country. In this country, you copyright, patent, you have a piece of music, artwork, an invention. It's protected. You can profit from that because of the government. It protects your personal property rights. That's in America. That's why you can build a fortune. I had one young lady in one of my classes. She was really upset about some of the things I said about socialism, how that's the opposite. Instead of us having the power, it's put in a central core group that has all that power. And she was saying, but we have socialism. We've got the police department, the fire department. We lay down roads. We lay down the utilities. That's all socialism. And I said, you're describing social. We are social creatures. We like to be together and do stuff. That's being social. Socialism is when you surrender all those choices into a central government power, and it compels and orders you to have just one baby, to have a car as long as you work for the government, to not have social circles that talk politics or religion. You find this in China, and you find it in North Korea. You find those strident, stringent controls. That's socialism.
So this is a motivator for you?
Yeah. I think each person that finally gets it, hopefully they'll go out and vote correctly, talk to their friends, instead of just throwing around opinions. I hate this guy, and I sure like this guy. Instead, see the principles involved, and then you're not deceived. Then you're not part of a mass movement into a bad direction. Then you can stand up, and you know what? That's all it takes. We're all born equal, but after that, all bets are off. You are the author of your own life.
I like that.
And those who like to blame society or blame racism or blame the culture, blame whatever they want to, they are simply not taking responsibility to work out of their own constraints and grow their life.
So what about the criticism that people may say these days that We the People doesn't represent everybody, and that it was written for certain minorities or majorities or segment of the population?
Right, yeah, there's zero foundation to that. It's just a nice way to start a fight. We the People was used, meaning that we, as a mass of 330 million almost, we are the true authorities for our government. We tell our government what it can do. And every single minority who feels excluded from that has a representative. And that's the key to this system. And if that connection to the representative isn't strong enough, the individual needs to go make it strong. And you're not going to do it by burning down our downtowns. You do it by asking for a lunch appointment and go in there and say, this is what's happening to me. At CIA, I worked with two African-American friends, two black friends. They were great. both of them from huge families. One of them was a family of 11 kids.
Oh, wow.
And he worked his way through college, and he qualified himself to work for CIA. It was no equal employment opportunity thing at all. He had his college degree, and he earned it, and he worked for it. And my other friend had the same story. We would sit together at CIA and see the headlines of calls of racism and all these things, and I would look at him and I would say, why don't I see those stories in you and your life? And he would roll his eyes and say, you know, that's not for most of us. That's just the inner city folks that are suffering. The Constitution gives a direction where you can grow your life regardless of where you find yourself today. You can grow it. But it puts the responsibility on your own shoulders, not the government's, which is why our system works so very well.
So why is it painted as a document that's out of date?
That's spoken simply from a position of ignorance. When I hear that from my students, they, oh, yeah, it's old-fashioned. I ask, well, which part is old-fashioned? And inevitably, a person always has just one or two particular issues. And the first one is guns. Yeah, it's out of date because that's an agrarian society. Show me where it's... No one can show me where it's for an agrarian society. They say, well, it's because of guns. Well, that's the Second Amendment. So that didn't show up until after the Constitution. So show me where it's old-fashioned. Well, the Electoral College. How come we can't vote for the president by popular vote? And so then okay, there's somebody who's starting to think a little deeper. And the answer to that one is very clear and simple. Voting for the president is extraordinarily complex because it's a balance between states and the federal government. And remember I asked you about the legislature, the 3 bills they last passed?
Which I don't remember.
Right, and me neither. That legislature, should they elect the president? Because the people are only going to listen to what's popular, what feels good, what answers their immediate biases and prejudices. Well, the legislature is going to also be biased. So what the founding fathers said, we got a problem here. If we just do it popularity, we're going to have a cause, like we're going to vote for a president because he or she supports abortion. So everybody's going to get behind abortion. Well, what about trade issues, and what about these others? They debated it back and forth. In fact, they voted on how to vote for the president 64 times in the Constitutional Convention. It was the most hotly contested issue. They did not want the president to be a popularity contest. That would be bad for the country. So they came up with a system where every state would elect a group of delegates, and those delegates would go to each candidate and ask them the hard questions, and then they would cast their votes. That's the Electoral College. So they are representatives of the state. They didn't want politicians because they would be biased. So a state would hold a convention and they would nominate, say here in my state it's 5 people, and those people would go to the convention and talk to the candidates. That's what was supposed to happen. Today, that's become corrupted. Today it's all party alignment. Legislatures pass laws and they say, you delegates, you electors to the Electoral College, you have to cast your vote according to the popular vote in the election we just had. So that nullifies the whole thing. We don't have this person-on-person contact and say, you said you're in favor of abortion. I'm opposed to abortion. How are you going to help me feel like we're getting this under control? You know, they can have that discussion. But today, we've kind of lost that.
If you want to save money on